How's it going, everybody? I'm Dave Glavin, an aspiring NBA salary cap strategist, and today I'll be discussing a project that I've been working on for the last month or so that analyzes each team's positional salary distribution, their respective production so far this season, and how these differ across the league. Given that we're approaching the prime of NBA trade season, this study will provide some insight into possible areas of opportunity for each team. And my next video is going to be an in-depth trade deadline primer with potential packages for those most likely trade candidates. A few notes to preface. I pulled position data from Cleaning the Glass to separate players into three categories: guards, wings, and bigs. And this exercise is definitely not a perfect science given the somewhat positionless nature of the game today. But the goal is to get a rough idea of how much teams dedicate financially to each position group and if they're being efficient in their spending based on this season's production. I used actual expected plus minus from dunks and threes and adjusted it based on minute share to create a more accurate weighted value of a team's cumulative positional production so far this season. Feel free to drop a comment below if there's a better statistic to use to measure the cumulative production for this season. I understand the limitations of an all-in-one metric like EPM, but felt that it could provide some value in this instance. One other thing to note, players with dead cap hits were not included in this study, which is notable for a few teams like Phoenix, Milwaukee, and Portland, who have dead money tied up to Brad Beal, Damian Lillard, and DeAndre Ayton. And lastly, all data was pulled after the games on the 31st, so I'm just missing one day, New Year's Day. No data from those games. I chose percent of total payroll as opposed to total dollars spent, just because teams aren't on the same playing field when it comes to the resources available to them. I understand that the CBA rules apply to everybody, but ownership plays a deciding factor in terms of what types of access front offices have to the financial resources to improve the team. So let's jump right into it. We'll start by looking at guards, and I'm going to hide the wings and bigs for now, and then we'll sort by the net. So in the first column here, we have the total adjusted expected plus minus for the entire team, all position groups included. And then we have where that team ranks in the league in terms of the percent of their payroll they dedicate to guards, as well as the production that they get and the difference between the two. While teams like Cleveland, Detroit, San Antonio, Phoenix, and Miami are all spending a large portion of their payrolls on guards and getting top 10 guard production, I'd like to highlight Boston, OKC, Houston, New York, and Philadelphia, as they're all getting top 10 guard production despite being in the bottom 11 in percent of payroll that they dedicate to guards. On the other hand, I'm also going to highlight Chicago, Charlotte, Indiana, and Sacramento, as they're all top 10 in guard spending, yet they've gotten bottom 11 production. I'm going to start with the bad, and let's take a look at Chicago first. They dedicate about half of their payroll to guards, which is headlined by Josh Giddey, who they just re-signed in this past offseason to a 4-year, $100 million deal. He's been a bright spot for this group, averaging 19, 9, and 9 on a career best 58 true shooting percentage. He's well worth that $25 million average annual value, and not the reason why their guard room has underperformed relative to their spending. I'm rooting for a speedy recovery from that recent hamstring injury, but he's been really solid this year. Kevin Huerter is in the last year of a 4-year, $65 million contract extension, and he struggled to replicate his production from when that deal was first signed with Atlanta. Still strong from the corner, shooting 46% from the corner three, but just 28% on non-corner threes, and not a plus defender. So really hard for him to make a positive impact when he's shooting it that poorly from long range. Kobe White, he's had a solid statistical season. Is getting to the line at a pretty insane rate, but struggled to stay on the floor, recently re-injuring that same right calf that caused him to miss the start of the season. Hope that he can get back and put together a consistent stretch in what's a pretty crucial contract year for him. I don't envision a parting of ways at the trade deadline, given that Chicago's offense ranks in the 90th plus percentile for points per possession, effective field goal percentage, and turnover percentage with him on the floor. He also has a plus 6.7 net per 100 possessions. But if he still expects a starting salary above that Josh Giddey 25 million average annual value, it would not surprise me if he does get moved. Trey Jones is in year one of a 3-year, $24 million extension. 64% true shooting percentage is a career high for him, despite making less than 30% of his threes, which is impressive. And similar to White, he's getting to the line at a ridiculous rate, a 54% free throw rate. Solid backup point guard who should fill in well with Giddey and White out. Ayo Dosunmu is another Chicago guard, just like Herter and White, who's in a contract year. He's in the final year of a 3-year, $21 million extension. Career best 62 true shooting percentage, including 42% from deep. But he grades out as a pretty poor statistical defender, and he's yet to be a net positive on the court in any of his 5 seasons with Chicago. He's going to be a part of my upcoming trade deadline video, as I do think there'll be a market for him. Last 2 guys in this guard room, Javon Carter and Dalen Terry, they're also on expiring contracts and are being paid probably double to triple what they should be based off their production. Carter's a minimum level player at this stage in his career. He can still knock down the 3 at a solid clip, shooting 42%, but hasn't contributed to winning basketball in a long time. And as for Dalen Terry, I expect him to end up on a 2-way contract next season. He's in the last year of his rookie scale deal. Just never has shown the offensive ability to hold his own at the NBA level. Moving on to Charlotte. Another team that spends more than half of their payroll on guards. Trey Mann is the main contributor to their low guard score in this metric due to being in the 80th percentile for usage, but just the first percentile for raw expected plus minus. Minus 11 net rating per 100 possessions, 45 true shooting percentage. He's coming off a few injuries. Seems like he's become a do-not-play coach's decision. I don't expect that to change, barring any major injuries to their group. I think it's concerning that he has another guaranteed year at $8 million before they can get out of that deal. He has a team option in year 3. The only other significant negative player in their rotation has been KJ Simpson, a 2-way guy. He got a lot of minutes early in the year due to some injuries to their top guys. Really struggled to put the ball in the basket, 44 true shooting percentage, and he's turned it over at just far too high of a clip to be a productive player. Colin Sexton, Josh Green, and Pat Connaughton make up about half of their total guard spend. While they're not bad players, none of them are productive enough to be worth their respective average annual values. Sexton's at almost $19 million, Josh Green $13.5, and Pat Connaughton at $9.4 million. Sexton and Connaughton are on expiring deals, while Green has one more season left at roughly the mid-level, $14.5 million. I understand he's coming off a pretty significant shoulder surgery, so definitely needs some more time to get acclimated, but Sexton joins Ayo Dosunmu as another guy who I think could be a trade candidate at this upcoming deadline. So I'll discuss that in my next video, some potential packages. But I do like the veteran presence that he brings to this young team. You're never going to question the heart and passion that guy plays with. I saved LaMelo Ball for last. I really struggle to get a good read on who he is as a player. He has some flashes of offensive dominance with the shot creation and the playmaking that are electric, but the shot selection, the decision-making, and the flat-out disinterest to compete on the defensive side of the ball make it pretty difficult for me to label him a franchise player. I'd much rather have him at Josh Giddey's $25 million average annual value than this almost $38 million, especially when he's got 3 years, $130 million left on that deal, and escalators to get 30% of the cap if he were to make All-NBA. In 6 years in Charlotte, he's given me no indication of being a leader. And as a point guard, I think that's enough of a sample size for me to be a proponent of a separation. If I'm Charlotte, then I think there would be suitors given that offensive upside. But we'll see if they hold him out till the offseason to see how he looks with some of the young guys, and especially with Brandon Miller coming back from injury. Going to move on to Indiana, who really doesn't belong in this group given the injury to Halliburton, but I'll talk about them quick. They spend about half their payroll on guards as well, and he makes up over half of that $87 million. Andrew Nembhard is in the first year of a 3-year, $59 million extension, and it's clear that the increased offensive workload with Halliburton being out has really hindered his ability to bring the same defensive prowess that he's known for. He's in the 7th percentile for raw defensive expected plus minus this season versus 95th percentile last year. I'm really not worried about how this deal is going to age. I think he's a perfect complement to Halliburton, and he's having a pretty good offensive season in his absence. TJ McConnell's been a bright spot for this group on both ends of the floor. I think he's a really unique player who I believe would have a good amount of suitors across the league, but I don't think Indiana is willing to part with him at this point, just where they're really only viewing this year as their one down year before Halliburton's back next year. This season was a big one for Benedict Mathurin, who's in the last year of his rookie scale deal, but I just don't see the long-term fit with Indiana, especially in Rick Carlisle's system. He's averaging a career best 19 points per game on 59 true shooting percentage, but he's yet to show that he can make a positive impact on the defensive end at the NBA level. And he's another trade candidate that I'll discuss in my next video. Ben Shepherd has really struggled in his third season, 47 true shooting percentage, and not a statistically disruptive defender, so he's not going to grade highly on that end. I do think he's better than where he ranks, 24th percentile for defensive EPM, but he's going to have to be far more of an offensive threat to get a second contract. With all the injuries, Indy's given 3 two-way guys some pretty significant minutes. Talon Peter, who was a second-round pick this past draft, Ethan Thompson, and Quentin Jackson. I don't have much to say about these three. Couple of impressive net ratings from Thompson and Jackson, though, who are plus 15 and almost plus 18 per 100 possessions, respectively, but not enough of a sample size for me to really warrant long-term rotation consideration for those two. Last but not least, amongst the guard underperformers is Sacramento, who is a case study in roster and asset mismanagement. Going back to last season, I understand the power that the players have. And for the most part, I'm a proponent of it, given that the best guys are worth well more than the max salary that they can earn. And you want to do right by guys who have sacrificed for your franchise. However, in the case of De'Aaron Fox, this was not a situation where you just blindly move a guy to his preferred destination just to get back pennies on the dollar. He wasn't on an expiring contract, so there was no threat of losing him for nothing in free agency. Instead, you panic and you get Zach LaVine back as the top asset for your best player, who LaVine in a vacuum is a great offensive player. He just might be the worst possible fit for what you already had while on a borderline untradeable contract. I think Chicago had been trying to trade him ever since they signed that deal. And now Sacramento has zero chance of moving on from him until that deal's over. You didn't get a single one of San Antonio's top 5 to 7 assets, which includes a 2031 pick swap that you sent them to get DeMar DeRozan from the Bulls, if that makes any sense. Went off on a bit of a tangent, but I feel like it's relevant to the state of this current guard group to touch on that. LaVine, while he's off to a solid offensive start, he's a good offensive player. He continues to be one of the worst statistical defenders in the league. He's in the 6th percentile for raw defensive EPM. And like we just discussed, he's on a max contract. Malik Monk, who's in the 5th percentile for that same defensive metric, has 2 years, $40 million left on his deal. They salary dumped Davion Mitchell in order to re-sign him. And Monk has been in and out of the rotation while we're seeing what Davion Mitchell is doing as the starting point guard at Miami. There's a reason that Dennis Schroeder has been traded 3 times in the past year. He's not a positive impact player at the NBA level, and that's continued this season in Sacramento. Phenomenal FIBA player, though. Love to point that out. They invested first-round draft capital in Devin Carter and Nick Clifford in the last 2 drafts, and followed that up by signing Russell Westbrook, who's taking valuable developmental minutes away from those 2. I'll always admire the passion and energy that Russ brings to the game, but I don't see the value here given the demand that he's going to have for minutes, especially when you've taken first-round guards in the last 2 drafts. I don't get it. But that's enough on Sacramento. Let's get to some of the teams who are outperforming their guard spend, starting with Boston, who's going to be on here multiple times. Derek White and Peyton Pritchard have really elevated this guard room into this conversation as one of the best in the league. White continues to be one of the most disruptive defensive guards in NBA history, really. And his offense has been rounding back into form after a slow start. Pritchard's having a career playmaking year so far this season as the full-time starting point guard. He's posting career highs in assists per 36 minutes with no change in his turnover rate, so that's encouraging. I expect to see some positive regression on his shooting, given that he's nearly a 40% career three-point shooter. I think he's in the low 30s right now, but not worried about that at all. As for the rest of their room, Anthony Simons seems like a prime trade candidate, just given that they should duck the luxury tax both this year and next in order to reset their repeater tax clock. He's maintained his strong three-point shooting in their system and definitely can provide a scoring punch off the bench for a contender, just not at that $28 million average annual value. I'll talk about him more in my next video, but I do see a return to Boston if he's willing to take a pretty significant pay cut, which would mean that Sam Hauser would be the odd one out if they were going to try to duck the tax. Hugo Gonzalez has had some fantastic minutes off the bench lately. I'm pretty sure he's leading the Celtics in net rating per 100 possessions this season. He's shown flashes of being a disruptive defender and shooting in the high 30s from 3. Still very early with him, but you'd never have questioned the heart that he's playing with when he's been on the floor, which is all you can ask for from a rookie. Baylor Shireman hasn't seen an increase in minutes from his rookie to his sophomore year this year, but shooting 41% from 3 in limited time off the bench. So that's the Boston guard group, which I believe, ranks second in the league in production. Really impressive after losing Drew Holiday. Moving on to OKC, who ranks first in the league in guard production. No surprise, led by the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's taken his game to a whole nother level somehow. He has the highest adjusted EPM of any player in this study and is on potentially the best value contract in the league outside of probably Wemby's rookie deal. He's getting paid about 25% of the cap both this year and next year before his Supermax extension kicks in. He's exceeding even the typical All-NBA 35% max players' production by a significant margin, averaging 32 points a game on a career-high 69 true shooting percentage. It's ridiculous. The one aspect of his game, his three-point shooting that teams had against him, is now a strength. Shooting 42% on 5 attempts a game. Definitely tends to settle a little bit, but when he's shooting it at that clip, if he's able to maintain that, it's just pretty incredible. Cason Wallace and A.J. Mitchell have made significant positive contributions, with the former leading the league in steals and the latter being a contender for Sixth Man of the Year. They're both on their first standard NBA contracts, which is going to contribute to that delta between their production and how much they spend at the guard position. And rounding it out, Alex Caruso, he ranks a bit lower in this weighted metric simply because he doesn't play many minutes, but he's maintained his incredible defensive play, struggling a little bit shooting the ball this year, but well worth the 18 million average annual value. Moving on to Houston, who it's very impressive for them to be on this list. They only have non-rookie. Their only non-rookie or minimum contract guard, who makes up about half of their total guard spend, hasn't played. They spend about 26% of their overall payroll on guards. Amen Thompson's been playing out of position to make up for Fred's absence. So he's included with the guards on this, but he's done a great job. He's averaging career highs in points, assists, and free throw percentage. I'm most encouraged by the free throw percentage for his long-term shooting development. And he's doing all this while continuing to be one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Reed Shepherd has made a big jump from year one to year two, becoming an extremely valuable bench piece for Houston. And this is really just his first year playing consistent minutes. 42% from three, and a really active, disruptive help defender. He's got great hands. Obviously not a great on-ball defender at the point of attack, but he's shown that he can hold his own on that end. Josh Okogie and Aaron Holiday round out this guard room. Two veterans that have given them really good minutes when they've needed them, both shooting in the mid-40s from three, which has helped the Rockets become one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league, which is quite a turnaround from last year. And Okogie's been one of the best minimum signings from this past offseason. He's playing well above the $2.3 million that he's making. He's making 3.3, but 2.2 against the cap. The Knicks, led by Jalen Brunson, also rank highly, despite only dedicating about 24% of their overall payroll to guards. He's averaging a career-high 29 points per game with the lowest turnover rate of his career. Gritty, three-level scorer, extremely good in the clutch. He's one of the worst statistical defenders in the league, but that's the price you pay for that type of offensive production in his case. He's far outperforming that $35 million average annual value and did New York a favor by taking his pay cut. He's due for a big payday once he hits 10 years of service, but I'd like to see more players take this route so that the team has more flexibility with adding talent in other areas. Deuce McBride is having the best season of his career, and he's playing at really 3 to 4 times the level of what he's making, which is right around $4.5 million. New York has him locked in for another guaranteed season around that number. He's averaging career highs in points per game, 3-point percentage, and he takes care of the ball when he's out there. Jordan Clarkson, he's provided a solid scoring punch off the bench for the Knicks. His one-dimensional play limits him in a study like this from ranking very highly, but New York knows what he's here to do, and that's put the ball in the basket. He's done that. I think he's averaging like 10 points off the bench, which is good for them. Landry Shamit's been out for a few weeks, if not a month at this point. He was another one of the best minimum signings from this past offseason. Career high 65 true shooting percentage. A couple big games earlier this year. So look to see him coming back soon. Tyler Kolek has gotten more and more trust from Coach Mike Brown as the season has gone on. Had a breakout performance in the NBA Cup final and brings toughness and high basketball IQ off the bench. He's much more of a traditional point guard than Deuce McBride. And in that Cup final specifically, played pretty well alongside Brunson. The numbers that he posts are not anything special, but he's a winning player. And I know Tom Thibodeau's smiling somewhere because he embodies a Tibbs guy. I think if New York can continue to get value from these minimum level guys, that can really change their ceiling as a group, just given how top heavy their payroll is. Last but not least, for the guards, going to talk about Philadelphia, who is led by their backcourt of the next decade, Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe. Maxey is by far one of the most exciting players in the league to watch on both sides of the ball. He's impossible to guard in open space, and while he's not the strongest point of attack defender, he is constantly getting deflections, getting his hands on the ball. If anyone hasn't seen the game-saving block from about a month ago at this point, I highly recommend checking it out. Insane to see how much ground he covered to save the game. He's an electric player, And it's evident the joy that he has and that he brings every night for the game. He's averaging 31 points per game on 60 true shooting percentage, career high 7 assists per game, and like I mentioned, similar to Reed Shepard, a sneaky, disruptive help defender. He's complemented perfectly by rookie VJ Edgecombe, who they took with a third overall pick. He's shown flashes of being an elite two-way player, still very early, but just recently had an impressive performance against Memphis that ended with a game-winning three. Played pretty well against Dallas last night too. So we'll look to see if he can become more consistent as he gets more NBA minutes under his belt. Jared McCain has really struggled in his return from meniscus injury, 46 true shooting percentage. But I'd like to note he still has only played about half a season total of NBA basketball, so plenty of time for him to get back to the flashes of being able to be in a really good scorer at the NBA level that we saw last season. Moving on to the wings, I'm going to do a similar process with each position group where I highlight who's being really efficient in their spending and who's not. So let's hide the guards and the bigs. And Houston, Boston, and Toronto, as you can see, they're spending big and they're getting good production. Shout out to Boston again for being top 3 in wing production, despite Jason Tatum, max player, missing the whole season so far. That's a testament to their player development group. Jordan Walsh playing really well. But a couple of teams that stand out to me as they're in the bottom 11 in percent of payroll dedicated to wings, but are getting top 10 production: Minnesota, Atlanta, and Denver. And as for the underperformers that I'm going to highlight, Brooklyn, Indiana, Utah, the Lakers, and Washington, who are all top 10 in wing spend, but are bottom 10 in production. Going to start with the high performers this time for the wings. Starting with Minnesota, they've had one of the 4 most productive wing groups in the league. They also have one of the thinnest rooms. Really only Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels get significant minutes. Anthony Edwards could definitely classify as a wing in today's NBA, but for this exercise, I have him as a guard. Julius Randle has been an excellent playmaker this year for Minnesota, averaging his most assists in 5 seasons, and he's partially filling the void of not having a traditional point guard in the starting lineup. He's amidst his most efficient shooting year of his career, right around 60 true shooting percentage, and is in year 1 of a new 3-year, $100 million extension. Jaden McDaniels is having the best offensive season of his career. He's shooting less three-pointers, but he's making them at a much higher clip, all while having to guard the other team's best player every night. I think he's a great complementary piece and well worth that $24 million average annual value. Terrence Shannon is the only other wing in Minnesota, and he's out with a foot injury. Not really sure how much that might have been affecting him this season, but when he has been playing, he's really struggled on the offensive end. 53 true shooting percentage, and statistically, he's not really an impact defender. I do think he can provide some physicality on the perimeter, but doesn't generate many steals or blocks. I really would like to see more from him at this point, just given his age. I think he was a 5th-year senior when he was drafted, but I am bullish on Minnesota as a group, but I think they're definitely a piece away from being a legitimate title contender. But they made 2 straight conference finals, so they're doing something right. I would like to note that the wing group has a pretty significant average adjusted EPM difference compared to the guards and bigs. So I'm going to get into Atlanta next. While they are top 10 in production, their cumulative production is just slightly positive. So regardless, they spend about a quarter of their payroll on wings, and they've gotten incredible production from Jalen Johnson, who's headed for his first All-Star game, averaging 24, 10, and 8 on 62 true shooting percentage, career highs across the board. He's not as impactful of a defender as you'd like, given his size, But that is the next step for him in his development. It's becoming clear that the build of their team is shifting to around him as opposed to Trae Young. The playmaking at his size is just a huge competitive advantage. And I think a parting of ways with Trae Young is on the horizon. I've been a big Trae Young guy in the past, and I do think his talent is undeniable. But watched a recent game against the Knicks, and the lack of defensive effort is unacceptable, even for your 15th man, let alone your franchise player. So I would understand if they're headed for a parting of ways. Risse's name has been in the news recently, given his lack of development. Obviously, he was a number one pick, so he's held to a different standard. But I don't think there ever should have really been star expectations. With that being said, he hasn't developed how you would have liked even a prototype 3-and-D wing to develop. 54 true shooting percentage, only 62% from the line, and really hasn't shown any playmaking ability. His shooting is going to have to improve if he's going to make a positive impact, especially as a starting caliber wing. Vit Krejci has been a solid developmental story for Atlanta. He's in year 2 of a 4-year, $10 million deal, and he's outperforming that average annual value pretty significantly. He's one of the best shooters in the league, 46% from 3, and a perfect complement to a guy like Jalen Johnson. Would not surprise me if they decline his 4th-year team option and reward him with a new deal if he's continuing to shoot the ball at that clip. Denver is up next. Pretty impressive for them to rank top 10 in wing production, just given the time that Aaron Gordon has missed and the slow start to the season that Cam Johnson had as he transitioned to the Nuggets. AG did get off to a pretty hot start, really the best start to his career offensively. 68 true shooting percentage, had a 50-point game earlier this season. And what was once his main weakness offensively is now a strength, which is a testament to the work that he's put in. Really hope he returns soon, especially with Cam Johnson recently going down. He was just starting to round into form with Denver after a tough start. Cam Johnson, that is. He's up to 43% from the three-point line and the perfect complement to a guy like Nikola Jokic. I do feel like there was some unrealized shot creation for him, especially when the rare minutes when Jokic and Murray are not on the floor. I think he can create his shot for himself and others. He showed that he could in Brooklyn. So hopefully they tap into that a bit more when he comes back, but should be out for at least a month, if not 2, with that injury. Peyton Watson has filled in nicely in what is a contract year for him. He's in the last year of his rookie deal. And I do expect him to re-sign in Denver for somewhere around the full non-tax mid-level, maybe a little bit more. Career high 61 true shooting percentage, while continuing to be one of the better shot blocking wings in the league. One of my favorite development stories of the season, Spencer Jones, a two-way guy in Denver who does all the dirty work. He's gotten better every game this season, and he's doing what he can to mimic what Aaron Gordon does on both sides of the ball. The energy and effort that he brings every night is contagious, and he should be rewarded with a standard contract when his two-way eligibility runs out. 65 true shooting percentage, tough physical defender. Again, a perfect complement to Jokic, and a great find on the margins by Denver's front office. I forgot to mention Julian Strawther. He's missed a good chunk of time this season with a back injury. Really struggled in the minutes that he has played. 48 true shooting percentage and not all that impactful as a defender. He's going to have to play given the amount of injuries they have to their top guys. So we'll see if he can become a bit more productive for them. As far as the underperformers for wings, I'm not going to talk much about Brooklyn or Washington as they're not actively fielding competitive rosters, even though Brooklyn has been playing better as of late. Shout out Michael Porter Jr. He's absolutely balling, and I don't think that they should move on from him, just given that they don't control their first-round pick next season. And I think he's a really good complement for a young point guard like Yegor Demon. We'll talk about Indiana. I talked about their guard room earlier. But in terms of the wings, injuries have hit them hard here as well. Obi Toppin has missed most of the season, and Aaron Nesmith has been out multiple times. Pascal Siakam has continued his strong play, despite their struggles as a team. Plus 14 net rating per 100 possessions, averaging 24, 6 rebounds a game. Obviously, they have the worst record in the league, so it's not like his play has been that exceptional, translating to winning, but just given the injuries that they've had, and they're going to have a chance to add a really good player to this core that's gone to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. So look out for them next season. They're not going anywhere. Jarris Walker has scored as one of the worst adjusted EPM players of anybody in this study, and that's just given how many minutes he plays and how poor he's played in those minutes. 48 true shooting percentage, ranks in the 9th percentile for raw defensive expected plus minus. This is concerning for a former top 10 pick in his third year. He really just hasn't developed into a viable NBA wing. Still just 22 years old, but in NBA years, he's reaching a pretty serious inflection point. He's going to be out of the league soon if he doesn't start to turn it around. Outside of some highlight dunks, I haven't seen enough of Johnny Furphy to really make any conclusions either way, so not really going to talk about him. Moving on to Utah. They spend the most of any team in the league on wings, almost 66% of their payroll, and that's mostly because their one max player, Lauri Markkanen, makes up about 35% of their total active salary. He's been phenomenal offensively. Bounce back year for him, building off an incredible Eurobasket. Plus 17 net rating, career high, 28 points per game on 62% true shooting. Utah's in a tough spot because he doesn't fit the timeline of their young guys, but it's not like he's 32, 33. He's a really good offensive piece. He's rebuilt his value to a point where you have to have a meeting internally about trading him because he would command really strong draft assets in a young player or two. Utah doesn't seem to have found that blue chip guy in their rebuilding process yet since they pivoted from Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. I know Keontae George has had a great year, but in a season where their pick goes to OKC if it's outside the top 8, and with this draft class being as loaded as it is at the top, I think trading Markkanen is still on the table to make a final push for one of those top guys. AJ Debinsta did not go to Utah Prep and BYU so that Utah could convey their pick to OKC. I don't believe it one bit that they will not have that pick this year and be in the mix for one of those guys. Kyle Anderson and George Niang will both be discussed in my next video as potential trade candidates. They're both not really playing right now. I know Kyle Anderson had a good game last night, but Niang has had a foot injury, hasn't played all year, but they're both veteran wings who are on essentially expiring contracts. Anderson has another non-guaranteed year, fully non-guaranteed, so basically an expiring. Ace Bailey, he struggled in his first season, 5th overall pick. Obviously, it's very early. I'm a bit concerned about his ability to create his own shot at the NBA level. He's only getting to the line once per game in 24 minutes. Long way to go. He's shown he can make really tough shots, but that's a little bit concerning to me. Taylor Hendricks is coming off season-ending leg injury. Shown some two-way flashes, but nothing really yet to warrant long-term rotation consideration. Cody Williams has a 38 true shooting percentage. I thought it was a typo when I saw it at first, but he has not shown an ability to be a competent offensive player at this level. So I don't really have much more to say on that. Bryce Sensabaugh has showed some promise with his shot making early in the preseason, but he really hasn't been able to replicate that at all, and doesn't grade out as a positive defender either. Moving on to the only team in this group who's actually trying to really push to make it far this season, the Lakers. LeBron being out for the first 14 games of the season provides a unique challenge, and they're naturally going to rank lower in this metric because of that. But if we're being honest, he's overpaid for the production that he provides at this point. And I'm as big of a LeBron fan as anybody, but this season has been tough to watch. Whatever defensive effort that he had left is gone. And when the shots aren't falling, especially from deep, he's nowhere near that 53, almost 53 million average annual value. For the second consecutive season, the Lakers are 7 points per 100 possessions better with him on the bench. And it puts them in a really difficult team building spot because they're known as a franchise for catering to the wants and needs of star players. It's what sells tickets, what gives them their appeal. But they need to operate with Luka Doncic in mind. And how do they maximize the next 3 to 4 years of his prime? Rui Hachimura does not seem to me like a guy who's a long-term fit next to Luka. He has nice positional size, and he's really found his three-point shot, shooting mid-40s from three. I don't think a Doncic-led team can afford to have a starting wing that's as bad as a defender as Rui is, given Luka's defensive shortcomings. Everyone else in that starting lineup has to be able to defend on the perimeter or protect the paint, and Rui does neither. I think he's been an impressive developmental project for the Lakers. He was not this level of offensive player in Washington, but I do think he should be a prime trade candidate for them at this deadline because I think he's the only guy that they're likely to move that would have positive value. I think he can contribute on a team that has better perimeter defensive infrastructure. Jared Vanderbilt is the best defender that the Lakers have, best perimeter defender. He can't play important minutes of any game because of his lack of offensive ability and how much he turns the ball over, just given his low usage. He's got a really high turnover rate. He's a negative asset with 2 years, $25 million guaranteed left on his deal. Jake LaRavia showed some flashes early in the season of being a solid replacement for Dorian Finney-Smith, but his three-point shooting has really fallen off a cliff, shooting just 30% from behind the arc. He provides some solid perimeter defense, but if he's your best perimeter defender, you're in trouble as a group. And this wing group as a whole for the Lakers is just really embarrassing for a team that's trying to compete for a championship when you have Luka Doncic and LeBron James. To wrap it up, I'm going to look at the big men. All right. Denver, New York, and Minnesota all spend in the top 10 and get top 10 production in return. Similar to the other position groups, I want to highlight the Celtics again, Orlando, San Antonio, and Detroit, as they're all getting top 8 production despite being in the bottom half of percent of payroll dedicated to big men. Just like with the guards and wings, again, I'm going to look at the bottom performers, who are Philadelphia, Memphis, the Clippers, the Mavericks, and Sacramento. They're all top 11 in big man spending, yet none of them crack the top half of production from that position group. We're going to start with Philadelphia. No surprise here. Really comes down to Joel Embiid not playing at the level of a max player anymore. And it's tough because he was so dominant on both sides of the ball at his peak. In my opinion, probably the most underrated defensive force of the last 10 seasons and one of the most unguardable big men that the game has ever seen. While he does continue to score it at a high clip, 23 points per game, he's having career lows in true shooting percentage, 55%, which is mainly due to shooting 24% from behind the three. He's getting to the line at a low rate and rebounding worse than he ever has. He's probably worth half at best of what he's currently making, that 55 million average annual value. And the really scary part is that his 3-year, $188 million max extension still hasn't kicked in. That starts next year, and that's going to hinder any chance that Philadelphia has of building a legitimate title contender unless they're somehow able to offload it. Highly doubt that anyone would be willing to take 3 years of him at that level, at that high percentage of a cap. But Luka Doncic got traded, so really anything is possible. Andre Drummond, all-time rebounder, but he's been passed by Adem Bona as their backup big, who has really given them great minutes off the bench, and he's developing into an impactful player. Leads the team in net rating, ridiculous 8.4 block percentage, solid offensive rebounder. He plays with a ton of energy. Dominic Barlow, two-way guy, seems to have found a home in Philadelphia. I think he might be a prime candidate to also get rewarded with a standard contract later this year. He's got a career-high 60 true shooting percentage. He's a capable defender, solid rotation piece for them this season. Moving on to Memphis. They spend more than any other team in the league by percent of payroll on big men, which is roughly 44%. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in year one of his renegotiation and extension. He's at roughly $35 million, actually $35 million on the dot, average annual value. He's had a down year, -7 net rating per 100 possessions, shooting just 53% at the rim. He's blocking shots at half the rate he did in his depoy season. By no means does that mean he's a bad defender, but he's just not as disruptive as he was at his peak. Continues to struggle with fouling. I'm a bit concerned with where that contract is heading. That's going to jump to about $50 million each year for the next 4 seasons. He has not been playing at that level, really even at the $35 million level. So that's definitely concerning if I'm the Memphis front office. I'd like to note that a lot of teams would like to have this group of big men in Memphis. I don't think they're a poor group. They're just not performing statistically to the level of being the most expensive group in the league. Santi Aldama is in year one of a 3-year, $52 million deal. I believe there's a team option on the last year of that. He's posting the worst net rating of his career, -6 points per 100 possessions. He's shown some flashes offensively of being a really unique player, shooting almost 60% on corner threes, but 27% from everywhere else beyond the arc. Doesn't foul on defense, and is posting career highs in points, rebounds, assists, and steals per game. He's a solid sixth man, and I don't think that's too much of an overpay, but definitely wouldn't want to see him in the $20 million range. Zach Edey has been their most impactful player. Ridiculous, +25 net rating. Real looking forward to him coming back. Career high 68 true shooting percentage, and he's been a monster protecting the paint and grabbing defensive rebounds. Jock Landale looks pretty good for a minimum signing. Shooting 40% from three, which has kind of been an interesting development for his game. That really wasn't. I know last year he posted a similar percentage, but he's shooting more of them than he ever has. Defensively, grades out pretty poorly. He's in the bottom 5th percentile for raw defensive expected plus minus, and not known for protecting the paint much at all, really. Moving on to the Clippers. They're the hottest team in the league right now, somehow. Winners of 6 straight, but their big man rotation has underperformed relative to dedicating 30% of their cap to that group. John Collins is in the final year of a 5-year rookie scale extension. Giving up Norman Powell for him has not turned out to be a good move at all. He's not a player by any means, but he's not a $26 million player. I feel like his next deal is going to be somewhere in the 10 to 12 range for average annual value. Shooting a career best 73% at the rim, but he's rebounding at the lowest rate of his career. And again, just never really lived up to the deal that he got in Atlanta. Big Zoo, he had a big breakout year last year, made all defensive second team. He's in the first year of a 3-year, $59 million extension. And while his net rating is down 15 points from last season, and they have been playing better with him sidelined. I still think he's an incredibly impactful big man and a top 10 starting center when he's healthy, um, especially at that number. That's a good deal. It's going to be a good deal for the whole contract. And if for some reason they wanted to move on from him, I think the list of suitors would be extremely long. Brook Lopez got off to a pretty slow start this season. Improved a bit as of late, had a big game in Portland. I think he hit 9 threes, but shooting 38% from the field, and he's turning the ball over at a higher rate than he has in a decade. Um, he does bring a unique element to their offense when he's hitting threes, shooting 37% from three this year. But I don't love that he has another season at $9 million guaranteed. Right now, he's playing at about half of that value, in my opinion, if not less. And I don't expect him to somehow get better in his age 38 season. So not encouraged by that at all. Think I might be butchering his name, but Yannick Conan Niederhauser. He's been getting some minutes with Zubac out lately. He's played well. Obviously hasn't played too many minutes, just small 100-minute sample size, but he's posting a plus 20 net rating. So we'll see if there's anything there, but obviously still very early. To round out their big man rotation, Kobe Brown. He appears to be headed out of the league. Never really developed into an impactful big man, undersized, so kind of in between wing and big. But he's already 26 years old, and I just don't see him getting another contract. As far as Dallas, similar story to the 76ers. They have a max guy in Anthony Davis who's lost a step. And he's not playing up to that $54 million average annual value. I mean, he's an incredible defensive player, but offensively, he's at his lowest points per game since his rookie year. And he's shooting a career low 68% from the line, where he's used to being in the mid to high 70s. The overall defense has held up. He's blocking shots at the lowest rate of his career, though. And with 2 years, $110 million remaining on that contract, and the constant injury risk, if I'm Dallas, I'm doing whatever I can to extract positive value from him on the trade market, preferably at the deadline, so they can position themselves for another top pick in what's their last year with a first-round pick for 4 years. He's going to want another big extension when that contract is up, and I just don't see any team giving him a max at this point. I mean, we just saw Kevin Durant take a sub-maximum contract, and he's still been incredible. So I think AD is in for a rude awakening if he wants a max contract again. He's going to be at well below that number. Daniel Gafford is in year one of a 3-year, $54 million extension. He struggled to replicate his production from his first season and a half in Dallas. Shooting a career-high 79% from the line, but he's turning the ball over at a really bad rate given his usage. He's shooting the lowest percentage from the field of his career, right at 63%. He could be another potential trade candidate, but I do think they wait and let him recoup some positive value, especially with Lively sidelined. Speaking of Derek Lively II, he's another factor into why Dallas's big man production has been so low this season. Really only played, I think it was 115 minutes before going down with a season-ending leg injury. I'm rooting for a speedy recovery. He's a really electric player as a lob threat and as a rim protector, and still developing, very young. Dwight Powell is third on the team in net rating. Longest tenured Mav. Has to be a good locker room guy because I just don't really see the on-court value at roughly double the minimum salary. But not having a bad year, really. Musa Cisse, two-way player. He's shown some flashes as a rim runner and a paint protector. 8.5 block percentage is definitely eye-opening. But I haven't seen much to warrant significant rotation consideration. We'll see if there's any moves at the deadline, if that opens up some minutes for him down the stretch as kind of an extended tryout for a standard contract. And moving back to Sacramento, can't get enough. Um, they have the worst big man rotation in the league statistically, despite dedicating 29% of their payroll to the position, which is 11th in the league. Sabonis has missed extended time, so that's going to affect that. But even when he was healthy, he was amidst his worst offensive season since 2018, efficiency-wise, 56 true shooting percentage, lowest assist rate in 7 years, minus 13 net rating, which is a 20-point swing from last year. Their team is less talented, so that doesn't help. But we'll see how he looks when he returns, which should be pretty soon. He's been out a while with that hamstring injury. But he was not playing close to the 42 million average annual value that he commands right now, and he's got 2 years, 93 million left on his deal, and I do not see any team willing to take that on. He's kind of in that in between zone as a big man where he puts up good statistical numbers when he's healthy, but he's really not a winning player where he can't defend the rim or stretch the floor. So I don't see him going anywhere. I don't have much to say about Drew Eubanks. He's having his best finishing season, 76% at the rim, but shooting a career worst, 53% from the line, and provides some pretty poor interior defense. One thing Sacramento has done right, I'll give them credit. They've given more developmental minutes to Maxime Reynaud, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Dylan Cardwell, who we'll get to in a second. Precious Achiuwa has been serviceable for what they got him for, right around the minimum, 2.1. They signed him early in the year when Sabonis went down. I don't really think there's anything to note there. Getting to Reynaud, provided some offensive flashes. He's averaging 11 and 6 on solid efficiency. Defensively, he's not at the baseline level you'd like to see for an NBA big man, but again, still very young. And I'd like that they're giving him a chance to make mistakes and develop, which is what they should be doing with their guard group. Dylan Cardwell leads Sacramento in net rating, two-way player at plus 13. Small sample size, but he provides a physicality and toughness that none of their other big men replicate. 8.9 block percentage, solid offensive rebounder. I think he could be another conversion candidate down the line this season if his play continues. I did skip over Dario Saric, who's a coach's decision, healthy scratch every night, despite being paid double the minimum salary. My last jab at Sacramento is that you gave up Jonas Valanciunas for him, just a one-for-one swap. I already spoke about their asset mismanagement, but this has transcended multiple front office regimes in Sacramento. They just continue to lose on the margins over and over again. And it's really frustrating to see from someone who is passionate about team building. On to the success stories. We're going to highlight Boston again. Really successful year for them so far in what was expected to be a down year with Tatum out. They spend just 5% of their payroll on big men, yet they rank 8th in production. I believe that 5% figure puts them at like 29th in the league. And this is largely in part due to the emergence of Neemias Queta, who poetically Sacramento let walk out the door. Ranks 4th on the team in net rating at plus 5. He's in the 95th percentile for raw defensive expected plus minus. Shooting 75% at the rim. He's averaging career highs across the board, playing more minutes than he ever has, obviously. But another kudos to Boston's talent evaluation and player development group. He's got 2 years left at basically the league minimum. So the Celtics have done it again, finding the opposite of Sacramento. They continue to get it done on the margins, especially when they're pretty strapped financially. Luka Garza is really the only other big man that gets consistent minutes for this group. Started off a bit slow, but he's playing well lately off the bench. Career high 72 true shooting percentage. Somehow he's shooting 47% from three, pretty limited attempts, but Still, 97th percentile offensive rebounder, doesn't turn the ball over. Missoula's going to love both of those, and that's how you're going to earn more minutes on a team like that. Um, Another case of the Celtics extracting positive value on the margins. Other two big men, Chris Boucher and Xavier Tillman, they really don't play. So, and Amari Williams, two-way guy, haven't gotten consistent minutes, so I don't have much to say. Going to talk about Orlando, who we haven't talked about yet at all today. Um, Another productive but pretty thin big man group. Spend about 12.5% of their payroll on bigs, with Wendell Carter Jr. and Goga Badatse being the only active rotation players, as Mo Wagner is still recovering from that torn ACL, I believe it was. Wendell is outperforming that almost 11 million average annual value, and he's heading into a 3-year, $59 million extension next season, which I think is going to age well. It's good value for a guy that has given them the two-way ability that he's shown this season. With Paolo and Franz not being known for stretching the floor, his 39% three-point shooting is necessary for their offense to rank as high as it has. Career high 63 true shooting percentage, including 77% from the line. He's always been an above-average defensive player, not known for generating a ton of steals or blocks, but always in the right position and a smart defensive player. His defensive rebounding numbers are a little bit down, but he still brings down about 8 boards a night. He's backed up by Goga Badatse, who's also exceeding the value of that $8.3 million. Orlando has him locked up for another season at even less, about 7.5, which is also a really good number for him, given the two-way talent that he's shown. Shooting 80% at the rim, near 7 block percentage. He's above average rebounder on both ends. Really can't ask for more than that from your backup five, and I think he's playing at almost double that value. He would absolutely get the full non-tax mid-level if he were to hit free agency. San Antonio, they have the best value contract in the league, Victor Wembanyama, who's playing at the level of a 35% max player, despite making just 9% of the cap on his rookie scale deal. Overall, they dedicate about 22% of their payroll to big men, but they get top 3 production. Starting with Wemby, 24, 12, and 3 blocks a night, career high 63 true shooting percentage. He's a ridiculous defensive rebounder and paint presence, above 10 block percentage. He's out again with an injury, but hoping it's just a few games for this one. Doesn't seem to be too serious. I think it's a hyperextended knee. They did the right thing this offseason and bolstered their big man depth, knowing that Wemby can be a little fragile at some points. Signed Luke Cornett to a 4-year, $41 million deal. But that's essentially a 2-year, $20 million deal with the partial guarantees that are on the 3rd and 4th year. He's exceeded that average annual value, provides great minutes both with and without Victor. Shooting 71% at the rim, great offensive rebounder, can protect the paint. And he's playing more valuable minutes than he ever has in his career while maintaining some pretty similar per 36-minute production. He's getting to the line at a career high rate and doesn't turn the ball over, which is going to translate to winning. Only other 2 guys in this rotation, big man rotation, are Kelly Olynyk and Bismack Biyombo, who both play spot minutes for this group, with Olynyk being in the last year of a 2-year, $26 million deal. He's headed for a pay decrease, but he does still contribute in some limited time off the bench. Second on the team behind Wemby in net rating at plus 10. Just figured I'd note that. Sometimes that's not in the most important minutes of the game, but good guy to have off the bench. Last but not least, been looking forward to talk about this big man group. The Detroit Pistons, by far the most physical big man tandem of any team in the league. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, and Paul Reed, they embody Detroit basketball, and they're starting to get back to that identity that they had in the 90s and early 2000s. They dedicate about 17% of their payroll to bigs, and they get top 4 production. Starting with Duren, he's my favorite for most improved player. He's in a contract year, headed for his first All-Star game. averaging 18 and 11 boards on solid efficiency. He's one of the best offensive rebounders in the league and a pretty solid interior defender. I would expect him to command a starting average annual value of at least $30 million next season, and I think it's well deserved. Really good compliment to Cade Cunningham, given that he's a lob threat, and again brings that physicality that very few teams play with in this modern NBA. He just went down with an ankle sprain last night, but I'm hoping it's minor, and then he'll be back soon. Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart is one of my favorite players in the league. Does all the dirty work, and every team in the league will be better with him in their rotation. He doesn't care whether he starts or comes off the bench. He's averaging a career high in block rate at 8.7%, and he's an above average rebounder. He showed some flashes of being able to stretch the floor, shooting 37% from three, especially from the corner, shooting 44%. He's a winning player, and he's under team control for the next 2 seasons at a pretty good number for the role that he plays, about $15 million average annual value. I wouldn't like him at more than that, but I think that's a perfect number for him and a good deal for Detroit's front office. Paul Reed is by far the best third-string center in the league, and I think he'd be a great addition to a lot of teams, in particular Denver, with Jokic and Valanciunas going down, but I don't think Detroit would give him up. Obviously, if you blow him out of the water with an offer, they'd have to, but I just don't see them giving him up at this point. One of the most disruptive help defenders at the big man position. He's got some ridiculous steal and block percentages for his entire career. He leads Detroit in net rating at plus 9.2, career high 67 true shooting percentage. If Duren has to miss time, he's going to have no problem filling in, and he's well worth that $5.3 million that he's making. I think he's right around 5 next year as well, maybe 5.7. They signed him to a 2-year deal this past offseason. That wraps up my discussion on the positional salary analysis across the league. Had a really good time looking into this. By no means is it an end-all, be-all evaluation of each team's positional production, but I find it valuable to look at who's being efficient in their spending because winning on the margins is what separates good from great teams, and it can extend competitive runs, especially in a unique financial environment with the constraints of this current CBA. Sam Presti's talked about it. I don't think the aprons hinder teams that have already developed that talent and retain that talent. It's more so tough for teams to add talent when their payroll is very high, but definitely a weird financial environment, but creative front offices will be able to navigate it pretty well. I appreciate anyone who tuned in, and look out for my follow-up video next week on trade candidates ahead of this deadline. Thank you.